Why two drinks that look the same in a glass tell completely different stories. Before we talk definitions, flavours or rules, let's slow this down for a moment. Whiskey and brandy have survived wars, empires, revolutions and industrialisation. They weren't designed for trends or marketing cycles. They were born out of necessity, geography and human curiosity. And yet today they sit side by side on shelves, often misunderstood, often compared, and usually reduced to brown liquor. That shortcut misses everything that makes them worth learning about. If you've ever wondered why one feels rugged and bold while the other feels refined and measured, you're in the right place. And if this kind of grounded, no-nonsense explanation is what you're here for, consider subscribing now so you don't miss future deep dives into the simple things we take for granted but rarely understand. Now let's get into what actually separates whiskey from brandy, starting at the very beginning, because that's where the real difference lives. You know, the raw material determines the soul of the spirit. Whiskey and brandy are defined first by what they are made from, and this single detail shapes everything that follows. Whiskey begins its life as grain. Depending on where it's produced, that grain might be barley, corn, rye, wheat, or a combination of them. Those grains are mashed, fermented, distilled, and eventually aged. Brandy starts from fruit, most often grapes. In simple terms, brandy is distilled wine. The sugars come from fruit, not grain, and that means the fermentation behaves differently, the aromas develop differently, and the finished spirit carries a natural fruit-driven character even after years in wood. This is why brandy often feels rounder and more aromatic, while whiskey feels firmer and more structured. Grain versus fruit is not a small difference. It is the foundation of everything else. So, whiskey emerged from regions where grain was plentiful and wine grapes were not. Ireland and Scotland, you know, really refined whiskey during the Middle Ages, with monks playing a major role in preserving and improving distillation knowledge. And over time, whiskey became a regional expression, evolving into Scotch, Irish whiskey, bourbon, rye, and other styles, all shaped by climate, law, and the grains that were available. Brandy, on the other hand, well, it followed a different historical path. It developed in wine-producing regions where surplus wine needed preservation and transport. Distilling wine made it easier to ship, and eventually people realized the concentrated product had its own appeal. France, in particular, refined brandy into cognac and armagnac, setting standards for aging, blending and regional identity that honestly still influence spirits today. Whiskey grew from brewing culture. Brandy grew from winemaking culture. That difference in origin, you see, explains why whiskey culture often emphasizes strength and robustness, while brandy culture emphasizes balance, patience, and refinement. Distillation is, you know, really at the heart of spirit making. It's this careful process that not only separates alcohol from the mash, but also, well, preserves the delicate flavors that define each drink. By controlling temperature and timing, distillers are able to capture the best aromas and tastes, ensuring that nothing essential is lost along the way. Distillation reveals what each spirit is trying to preserve. Whiskey distillation often aims to retain grain character. Pot stills, commonly used in Scotch production, produce heavier, oilier spirits. Column stills, often used in American whiskey, create a cleaner base that still carries sweetness and spice from the grain. Brandy distillation is, more protective of aroma. The goal here isn't really power, but clarity. Traditional cognac and armagnac producers, they rely heavily on pot stills that let fruit, floral and wine-derived notes carry through. The resulting spirit is often softer and honestly more expressive straight off the still, even before aging begins. This is why young whiskey can feel sharp and aggressive, while young brandy often feels, surprisingly elegant. Once distillation is complete, the spirit's journey is far from over. Aging in oak barrels becomes the next crucial step, shaping both the flavour and character of the final brandy. Over years, the spirit gently extracts tannins, colour and subtle vanilla or spice notes from the wood. This slow process, influenced by the climate and the size of the barrel, transforms raw spirit into a complex and harmonious drink. Patience, as always, is rewarded with depth and elegance in every sip. Aging is where oak either leads or supports. Both whiskey and brandy are aged in wooden barrels, usually oak, but the role of the barrel is not the same. Whiskey aging is oak forward. The barrel is a dominant force, contributing vanilla, caramel, smoke, spice and structure. In bourbon, the law requires new charred oak barrels, which aggressively shape flavour. Aging is essential to making whiskey drinkable. Brandy uses oak more as a frame than a spotlight. While cognac and armagnac spend years in oak, the goal is integration, not domination. The fruit character remains central, with the barrel adding depth rather than replacing identity. Some fruit brandies are barely aged or not aged at all because, extended oak contact would erase what makes them unique. In whiskey, oak transforms the spirit. In brandy, oak supports it. Flavour profiles and personalities, they go well beyond just the ingredients. Every spirit tells its own story through its flavours. Flavour profiles reflect personality, not just ingredients. Whiskey tends to present itself with confidence. Expect notes of caramel, vanilla, toasted grain, spice, smoke or peat, depending on the style. Bourbon leans sweet and full. Rye brings sharp spice. Scotch ranges from light and floral to heavily smoky and maritime. Whiskey often demands attention. Brandy speaks more quietly, but with complexity. You can expect dried fruit, fresh grape, floral tones, nuts, baking spice, and a gentle sweetness. Cognac often feels polished and aromatic, while armagnac feels earthier and more rustic. Fruit brandies can be vibrant and direct, tasting unmistakably of the fruit they came from. Neither is better. They simply reward different moods and moments. Drinking culture, often reflects personal values and traditions. The way we choose to enjoy brandy, whether it's with friends or in quiet reflection, says a lot about what matters to us. For some, it's about savouring history and heritage, while for others, it's just about the pleasure of the moment. Either way, brandy invites us to slow down, appreciate and connect with ourselves and with others. So, let's talk about how drinking culture really reinforces the difference here. Whiskey culture, emphasises versatility. It's sipped neat, poured over ice, and forms the backbone of countless classic cocktails. Honestly, it adapts easily to both casual and formal settings. Brandy culture, on the other hand, is more ritualistic. It's traditionally enjoyed neat, often after meals, in smaller quantities, meant for slow appreciation. And while brandy cocktails do exist and are excellent, the spirit itself often invites patience rather than experimentation. This difference in use, well, it really reinforces how people perceive each drink, even before the first sip. Choosing between whiskey and brandy depends on what you value. If you're drawn to bold flavours, structure and variety, whiskey offers endless exploration. But if you value elegance, aroma and fruit-driven depth, brandy rewards careful attention. Many serious drinkers, honestly, eventually appreciate both because they answer different questions. Understanding the difference isn't about choosing sides. It's about knowing what you're tasting and why it tastes that way. Why understanding simple things makes them more meaningful. Whiskey and brandy are not just drinks. They are distilled records of geography, agriculture, and human decision-making. When you understand what separates them, you don't just drink differently. You think differently about craftsmanship, patience, and tradition. If this guide added clarity to something you've wondered about, take a moment to subscribe, share it with someone who enjoys learning deeply, and stay connected with simple things explained. There's always more meaning hiding in plain sight, and we'll keep uncovering it together.